Can a movie succeed when expectations are this high? Hi everyone, my name is Chris and welcome to TreadTalks, where I walk on this treadmill to stay in shape while making videos for you fine people. One of the hardest things to do if you're a filmmaker or a writer is to follow up something that completely exceeded expectations. People want more of this world that you created, but they also now have a really high bar for judging what you'll deliver. So I don't envy the position that James Gunn was in when having to write Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Because really, the first one was one of the biggest surprises from this series of Marvel movies that we've gotten to date. The good news is that what he's done with Volume 2 is enough to keep us excited and entertained and looking forward to the next one. Now the story itself is intriguing because it manages to be both relational and intimate while at the same time using some of those relationships to increase the scope of what's at stake here. The conflicts and the threat to the galaxy are very much intertwined with the characters and their relationships with one another. And thankfully, for the most part, those relationships succeed, especially Drax and Mantis and Rocket and Yondu. I was surprised by how touching several moments in the movie were with those characters, especially when some of those characters are complete computer-generated creations. I also like how they gave us greater insight into Nebula's motivations and why her relationship with Gamora was so strained. It made me actually care for her and empathize with where she was coming from. And the result of all of the obvious care that went into crafting these characters and developing their relationships is that we end up caring about them even though they're in the far-removed setting of space and science fiction. They come off as genuine more often than cheesy, and they make us laugh more often than not. And there's a reference to a 1960s classic musical that I'm still laughing about today. And I say this without touching on the success of the visual effects and the art design. You get the sense, and this is confirmed in the credits, that there's an entire army of people dedicated to bringing this aesthetic to life in a way that's visually convincing and that fills every nook and cranny of every screen. It's really a treat to watch because it's so distinct from the other Marvel movies. At the same time, the film's not perfect, and even in the areas I've already mentioned, there are some things that bring the movie down a notch. The relationship between Peter and his father Ego was the one I had the most difficulty believing and embracing, which is a bit of a shame because it's the central relationship of the movie. In part this is because Chris Pratt's performance isn't the most dramatically convincing, and on top of that the relationship itself has to go through a significant amount of change in the span of a single film, so it felt a bit rushed. It's not terrible, but it's not great either. And from a story perspective, it feels like the transition into the final major conflict of the movie was a bit rushed, and that characters start doing things more because the plot needs to move forward than because it's actually what they would do. There was one scene in particular where there's a revelation made that made for an awesome scene and it moved the plot forward, but at the same time I thought to myself, just literally, well, that was dumb of you to say. In addition to that, and I realize that I may be in the minority here, but I don't really enjoy Baby Groot, especially when he seems to be used more for cutesy merchandising purposes than anything else. And that's how I have to interpret the start of the film, which seems like an extended Baby Groot dance number. Thankfully though, as the film progresses, they use him in more interesting ways, and I eventually found him endearing and humorous. Just didn't start out that way. But overall, these shortcomings are relatively minor compared to its successes. The movie doesn't exceed expectations, but it does enough to keep us excited for Volume 3. And that's why I'm giving Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 3.5 stars. Okay, so that was Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Now I recognize that last time you ended up picking Free Fire as the movie I would review next. It turns out that movie's not playing in my area, so I can't do that. And between now and I think a couple of weeks from now, there's a bit of a lull when it comes to movies. So I'm going to use this time to start a little bit of a passion project. I'm going to take one of my favorite movies of all time, and I'm going to dive into it and tell you every single interesting story and anecdote that I can find about that movie. And I'm starting with one of my favorite films of all time, Die Hard. So, it's going to take me a little bit of time to put together, but I hope when it comes out that you'll enjoy it. Beyond that, if you like this video and you want to keep up with my content, please like and subscribe, and hit the little bell icon to be notified when a new video goes up. Either way, thank you very much for watching, and have a great day.